Hello everyone, welcome to my December 2018 haul video. Welcome back everyone, this is a brand spanking new haul video for the end of 2018. By the time this video is up, it'll probably be well into January of 2019. So of course I'm apologizing for how late this video is, and you hear me say that in these last couple of videos, but that's just the way things go sometimes. But if you're not familiar with these videos that I do on my channel, basically it is essentially what the title suggests. I just go through all of the items I pick up in a specific month. They're usually movie related, comic book related, and book related in general and things like that. So without further ado, let's get into all the things I picked up in December. And of course that has to do with all of the Christmas gifts or holiday gifts and all the other stuff. So first up here, and these are really in no particular order, is something I've been wanting to add to the collection for a very long time. And it is something that I wanted to add since before I even started collecting comic books. And that is the library edition of Hellboy, and this is volume 1, put out by Dark Horse Comics. This is kind of their bigger, more expensive, more deluxe versions of a lot of their comics that they put out. They put them in what is called a library edition. And as you can see here is a big, large, oversized hardcover, and with really great paper stock. And if you're not familiar with Hellboy, I'm sure you probably are, but if you're not, Hellboy, of course, had 2 film adaptations done by Guillermo del Toro. There's another brand new adaptation coming out this year, and there's a couple of spin-off titles with BPRD and things like that. And I just really wanted to get the original run with Mike Mignola in my collection for a long time, but I've been holding out because I really want to get all of the library editions, and they actually are quite affordable now, which is really nice. And I really just love this deluxe edition, and I can't wait to get the others in my collection. And speaking of large hardcover books, next up here is a new omnibus that I picked up. This is something I picked up actually after Christmas with a little extra Christmas money I got from certain relatives. And this is The Flash Omnibus by Francis Manapool. This is essentially the first 25 issues or so of the New 52 run of The Flash. This is actually my kind of first run that I've read of The Flash. When I started collecting comics back in 2011, The Flash was one of the first titles I picked up. If you're not familiar with the New 52 and how all of that started, it started with, of course, Flashpoint, which was centered around the Flash and him kind of screwing with time and all that kind of stuff. And if you're familiar with the Flash character through the show that is now on the CW, simply titled The Flash, you get a lot of the rogues gallery that you've seen in that show is also in this as well. Next up are a couple of individual issues that I picked up. All of them are of the same comic book run, and that is the Supergirl run by Mark Andreyko. First up here I have is the variant cover for issue number 23. I figured I saw it, why not pick it up as well? I believe I already have the regular cover for number 23, but comic book collectors tend to double dip all the time, so that's just something. Next is the regular cover for issue number 24. I couldn't find the variant for this, so I just picked up the regular one. I believe I completely forgot to pick this up when it came out. I have to really look. I have to really organize my comics in general because they're kind of all over the place right now. And lastly is the variant cover for issue number 25. As you can see on the cover here is Supergirl and Krypto. And that is kind of what they've been doing with all of the variant covers for Mark Andreyko's run so far, at least that I've seen, is that they have something featured with Supergirl and Krypto on the front. And when it comes to comic books, last but most definitely not least, is something I was pleasantly surprised to still find in stores, and I'll get to the reason why in a second, and that is Batman Cataclysm. This is, of course, a trade paperback, as you can see, and the reason why I was so surprised to find this in store is because for some reason I'm not quite sure of, this is now out of print. And it's really frustrating that it's now out of print because it is part of the multiple issue storyline of No Man's Land that took place within the Batman comic books, and it has multiple volumes, and this is of course one of those volumes, so you can't get the whole collection if you're missing one, of course. So I'm really surprised that I still found this in a store somewhere. If you are looking to get the entire trade paperback run from No Man's Land, and you haven't picked up Batman Cataclysm yet, please do so if you find it. If you find it online, on eBay, if you find it in your local comic book store somewhere, or wherever, hunt this down if you don't have it before it becomes even more rare and even more expensive than it already is. Next up is the lone book that I picked up in the month of December, and this is a book by my friend and fellow cinephile, Alicia Malone. This is her second book that she has now written over the last couple of years. Her first book, Backwards and in Heels, I did a review for here on my channel very soon after it came out, and this is The Female Gaze. And what is interesting about this book here is that it is not only her writing, but she enlists the help of a bunch of other female cinephiles, female film journalists and bloggers and all kind of stuff like that, and they decided that they would each write about a specific important film directed by a woman or having to deal with women in film and things of that nature. This is, of course, a hardcover book, so please check this out if you haven't already. Give her other book a read if you haven't already, and just support women in film and support people like Alicia Malone who are championing those things. These last group of things are, of course, what the bulk of my purchasing history has shown us, and that is, of course, movies, specifically Blu-rays. First up here is pretty appropriate considering what I just talked about, and this is a Blu-ray box set put out by Kino Lorber Classics, and this is called Pioneer's First Women Filmmakers. And this is a box set that is 6 discs, and it contains over 50 films from women who made films during the silent era, specifically the 1910s, and specifically short films. There were a lot of short films made within the silent era, not many feature films, and women were a big force when it came to making films during the silent era. It was really when the 20s came around with the studio system kicking in, and of course the silent era ending and the talkies starting, that women were relegated to other menial roles within the film industry. But before then, you had a lot of really powerful, awesome women making really great films, and we are very lucky to still have them kicking around today in some form or another, so where we can restore them and distribute them on DVD and Blu-ray and all that kind of stuff. And I'm really looking forward to digging into this set, because not only does it have all of these films, but of course it has a booklet as well telling us all a bunch of valuable information as well as special features. This is definitely a box set that I'm going to be diving more in-depthly into in an individual review once I get into all of its content. But next up here is a Blu-ray that I actually had to import from the UK, because here in the United States, we still don't have a DVD or Blu-ray release of this film here called Columbus, which was a film that came out in 2017 and was one of my favorite films that came out that year. This film is directed by Kogonada, and it is starring John Cho and Haley Lou Richardson, and I think this film is absolutely amazing. It absolutely blew me away in all of its forms. Impeccably well acting, gorgeous cinematography, fantastic in-depth themes that were explored in this film, and it's very much a character piece, and I just absolutely loved it. Next up here is a more current film, and one of my favorites of the year, and this is a 4K UHD edition of BlacKkKlansman, directed by Spike Lee. If you're not familiar with this film, I did an individual review for it when it came out in theaters. Please check that out if you haven't already. Next up is one of the best, if not the best, action film I saw in 2018, and that is Mission Impossible Fallout. This is now the 6th film in the Mission Impossible franchise, and it is fantastic. I also did an individual review for this when the film came out, so please check that out as well. The next 2 Blu-rays that I have are part of the same franchise, and they are both 4K upgrades to Blu-rays I already have. And first up here is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. And I'm slowly upgrading a bunch of those Harry Potter films into 4K, because the Harry Potter films actually came out quite a few years ago, and their Blu-rays came out quite a few years ago, so these new 4K editions that you've seen cropping up that are all out now are really significant upgrades when it comes to the overall visuals of these films. Next up here is a film that I keep recommending to people. Well, I keep recommending it as well as its sequel, and that is Paddington. If you remember from last month, I picked up Paddington 2 during the Black Friday sale, but I didn't have Paddington at the time. So I swooped in right away when I was able to find it, and I just can't express my love for these films enough. They are wonderful, genuine, heartfelt films that are just amazingly well done. And switching tonally, completely different than Paddington, is the 4K UHD release of Steven Spielberg's masterpiece, Schindler's List. This got, of course, a brand new pristine 4K restoration, and the remaster on this is amazing. This film is an all-time masterpiece of a film. Recently, my friend Steven and I did an entire breakdown of this film in our podcast, The Cinema Discovery Project, where there is an iTunes link below if you'll want to give it a listen. And last but certainly not least is another 4K UHD release, and that is 2001: A Space Odyssey. Of course, this is directed by the great Stanley Kubrick, one of, if not my favorite filmmaker of all time, and this is one of his several masterpieces in my opinion, and this once again got a brand new, stunning 4K re-release, and this film was leap years ahead of its time, and just unimaginably amazing in what it was trying to do. Yet again, it's a high art sci-fi film, not sci-fi from the perspective that I think a lot of us are aware of now. Before the time, it was completely unlike anything that was around. So that is my haul for December of 2018. If there's anything you want to see in any more depth, please let me know. I'm definitely planning on doing a more in-depth look at that Kino box set because I think it's very important, and I don't think a lot of people are aware of that set exists or aware of the great Blu-rays and sets that Kino is currently putting out. So once again, if you like this video, please check out the other videos on my channel.